About a month ago, I quit my big tech career as an L8 engineer to be a solo builder. I worked at Meta, Microsoft, and Atlassian for almost 2 decades. The job was good, the people were great, and the compensation was nothing to complain about. But I still quit. I'm making this video to share why I made this decision, how I evaluated the trade-offs, and how the first month has been. I'm doing this because I know a lot of people have been thinking about a similar question. I know when I was trying to make the decision, I wished there were more real stories I can look at to understand what this path looks like. So I'm gonna share my journey as transparently as possible so that it can become a concrete data point for anyone that wants to understand what a jump like that looks like. So let's start with the why. I did have a great time at big tech. I started at Microsoft as a junior developer, and I learned from a lot of talented engineers over there. I was given a lot of autonomy as I grew more and more senior, and I gained a lot of real experience from working on those large-scale problems. I got to know a lot of great people as well, and I grew all the way from an entry-level engineer to now level 8. I'm basically completely a different person now because of that experience, so I don't regret that experience at all. But over the last couple of years, a few things really changed. The first thing was that as I grew more and more senior, what I found was that my time was much better leveraged by telling other people what to do other than doing things myself. For example, if I can help make a better decision to correct a team's direction and avoid a 500 people team going down a wrong path, that's much more impactful than whatever I can code myself with the same amount of time. So I ended up spending more and more of my time setting direction other than building things myself. But I really miss building things. I enjoy the process of building, not just the output of it. So that was one of the reasons. The second thing was AI. AI really created a lot of opportunities for new things to be built. It also changed how we work. So now a small team or one single person can do so much more than before, which made it feel like a really great time to be exploring ideas. It's basically another industrial revolution. The last reason is that my son is now 8 years old. He's a lot more independent, and he can beat me in chess now. So both me and my wife feel like we now have a little bit more time, a little bit more breathing room to think about what do we really want to do. And we have a bit of savings, so even if neither of us makes any money, we can still last for a while. So these changes basically created the perfect condition for me to take that leap of faith. Now, I do want to be honest with you that this is still not a fully rational decision. I actually did the math. I modeled the different financial outcomes of where I might end up with if I keep doing this for 1 or 3 years. And let me walk you through it. These are the 4 most typical outcomes of people who go out and build their own thing. I may get nothing. I may just build something completely useless and no one is gonna want it, and I'll get nothing in return. And then there's soft landing, which is sometimes also called acqui-hire, and there are many other ways as well. This is when you build something that's reasonable and demonstrated your expertise in the area, and there are some companies that wants to buy you and your team, not your thing, if that makes sense. In this case, you are not looking at a massive exit, but it's some money. And then there's a successful exit. This is typically when you build something that has business traction and other companies want to acquire this thing, not just your team. This is when you can expect a higher return. And then of course there's the case where you build a unicorn startup and it's really getting a very high valuation. And these numbers are just very sensible and reasonable averages that I hear from many cases that I looked at. So there are different ways to assign probability to each of these scenarios. In a conservative case, the vast majority of startups will go to nothing. And there are a reasonable amount of them will get a soft landing, a smaller amount of them get a successful exit, and a very, very small number of them become a unicorn. Even this number I feel like is maybe a little bit higher than reality. And then I estimated different probabilities in different scenarios. So there's a mid case and there's an optimistic case. Even in this most optimistic case, this is what I can expect from the 3 years of going on this adventure. And sadly, this is still a lot lower than what I can get from big tech over 3 years. So if I trust the math, I probably shouldn't be doing this. But can we make life decisions like this with math? Who does that? When I grow old and look back on my life, am I going to be satisfied if I spent all of my time working for big companies and made a really big number in my bank account, but never gave myself a shot at building things I want to build and see where that leads us? And the answer was obviously no. So I already had my decision. I just had to admit and act on it. So there I go. I quit. The first Monday after leaving my job, I woke up, I made coffee, and I sat down at my desk. And I was like, what do I do now? For all those years, whenever I open my laptop, there's always a pile of messages I need to respond to. There's always a whole day of meetings to prep for, and there's an infinite scroll of to-do list for me to pick up from. But now there's nothing, a blank canvas, a complete freedom. It was very, very different. It was a big change for me. And I actually discovered I had to learn how to use the freedom. So I started with just building the ideas I piled up over the years. The first thing I had strong conviction about was to build an AI tutor for my son. My son is 8 years old. He's learning math, he's learning chess, he's also trying to learn coding as well. And I have been thinking, an AI can really give him a much more personalized experience of learning those things than just watching videos. So basically, I just sat down and started building. And one thing that was really interesting that started to happen as I started to build solo was that because there's zero organizational overhead, I could move so fast. And when I moved so fast, I discovered new bottlenecks that didn't exist before. And I found a lot of problems in my development workflow that none of the mainstream products can solve. So I started building tools to help solve my own friction. And then I shared those tools with others as open source projects. And then I saw more and more people started using those tools as well. So now I accidentally became an open source project maintainer, which I didn't expect I would be doing. That's not my main quest, but I took on these side quests anyway. Because one, it's a new experience for me and I'm kind of curious to see where this leads. And secondly, it does help myself move faster. And I did move very, very fast. I was constantly shipping about 30 to sometimes over 100 PRs every day. And they are all well tested and documented. Since I left the job, I shipped Goodnight Have Fun, No Mistakes, Axie, Autopresso, Lavish Editor, Simple Words, and probably I'm still missing a bunch of things. And all that while I was building the main quest, which is the AI tutor. I was constantly thinking, typing, building, and shipping. I feel like the quality and the speed of my thoughts was the only bottleneck, and everything else was just flying. Very often, I would have an idea, and then 15 minutes later, it's already live, and people already started using it. And some people came into my Discord to report problems, and by the time they finished describing the bug, I already had a fix ready. It really felt amazing. It's really hard to articulate how amazing that is. But that's something I really missed as I grew more and more senior at those big tech companies. I do plan to make another video about my agentic engineering workflows. So if you're interested in learning about what really enabled me to move so fast, subscribe and watch out for another video. None of those things make any money though. But that's not my focus right now. Right now, I just want to build and ship and share with the community and started to learn what it means to be a solo builder. Something I didn't quite expect was that I was actually able to build some momentum pretty quickly. I went from almost no followers to over 8,000 followers on X just from sharing my story and projects. Goodnight Have Fun, which was a tool I built mostly for myself, very quickly crossed 1,000 GitHub stars organically. I didn't have budget to buy fake stars like others do. I also joined Steve on his podcast, where we talked 3 hours straight on everything that's happening to software engineering. It's already crossed 20,000 views, and I highly recommend a watch if you haven't come across that yet. For someone that's never done any of this before and has never worked solo, it was a pleasant surprise and very encouraging for me to see the progress. So I did spend some time thinking about what did I learn from that. I think the first thing was to show up as an authentic human. The first viral tweet I had was the AMA I did when I quit my job. I basically started this thread on X and offered to answer any questions about my decision and myself. And I was expecting maybe I would get 5 to 10 questions, mostly from people who already knew me and asking why I left and what I'm doing now. But instead, the thread totally blew up and it got 200,000 views. And I was so busy that day answering over 300 questions from people all over the world. I think especially in the age of AI, where a lot of content is just from generic AI slop, it's really important to be authentic as a human and share your real stories with others. That's probably the first thing that's really made a difference. The second thing, I think, is craftsmanship. Take Goodnight Have Fun as an example. It's basically a long-running agent orchestrator. I could have just named it long-running agent orchestrator and just build that as a very plain CLI command. It will do the same job. But I was thinking, Since I'm a solo builder now, I can decide everything. Why don't I be creative and add some personality to it? So I looked at how I use this tool myself. And I realized I mostly use that to run agents overnight. So I was thinking, let's just make the experience match the scenario. And that's why I named it Good Night Have Fun, and why I added the Starry Night as the background to the app. And that gave me a feeling of zen and peace while I watched the agents busy doing the work. And later on, when a lot of people came to me and told me they liked the tool, a lot of them mentioned that it was the pleasant user experience that grabbed their attention in the first place. So that also gave me some proof point that spending some time on the polish and craftsmanship does make a difference. The third thing, I think, was connections. I got to know Steve because a few years ago, I made some YouTube videos about career advice. But I didn't expect Steve would notice it and would reach out for some collaboration ideas. I definitely didn't expect that a few years later, when I quit my job, I would get support from Steve and go on his podcast. And then through Steve, I can get to know a lot more talented creators and builders who are like-minded. I have to admit, I am an introvert, and networking is not really my thing. If you leave me alone, I will actually be alone. But experiences like that really made me believe that it's important to go out and make connections. You never know when the dots will connect. Now, I also wanted to talk about my learnings about autonomy in the first month. The autonomy of being solo is just unbeatable. Even if I am to build a startup with a co-founder or a small founding team, the autonomy is gonna be nowhere near what I have right now. I can pivot 5 times a week. I can tell myself on Monday that I have a brilliant idea. And on Tuesday, I can say it's total crap and I'm gonna throw that away. And no one is gonna judge me. I will not lose any credibility over doing that. I can also just suddenly decide to spend hours today making this YouTube video, which is not part of the business, and it will be okay. But I also feel like it's kind of dangerous to have this freedom, because basically there is zero accountability of my decisions. I can very easily randomize myself and start to do 1,000 different things, which don't really add up to a strong outcome. So the question is basically, how do you avoid that? And this is where my experience from big tech was actually helpful. I knew the answer. I knew the answer was the same for a company, for a team, or for an individual, which is to have a clear mission. Think about this. Why does Microsoft not do real estate? Why does Apple not sell you coffee? Why does Stripe not build cars? It's not because those are not great businesses. It's because everyone needs focus in order to achieve something great. That's the same for a person too. So as a solo builder, I realized I had to be very clear about what is my personal mission. What is something that I will be happy with if I look back on my life and said, that's what I did with my life. And with that lens, I actually filtered out a lot of ideas. Many things just don't meet that bar. And after a lot of reflection, where I landed as my personal mission was that I wanted to help empower every individual to discover, pursue, and achieve their full potential. I believe every person has their ambition, but they often don't have the right education, support, or leverage to achieve that. And if I can do something that helps a lot more people achieve it, I would be pretty happy about myself. So from now on, I can easily apply the mission statement to filter what I do. If something seems like a great idea, but don't ladder up to the mission, I just don't do it. It's very simple. I think this really helps avoid going into random directions and stretch myself thin. Now, looking forward to the next month. I'm honestly not sure where I will end up with yet, but I guess that's the point. Just like how I couldn't have predicted what I would be doing in the first month. I'm curious to see where this road leads me. So yeah, that's me. First month being a solo builder. If you are thinking about making a similar move, I would not tell you to copy what I did. I would tell you to be honest about the trade-offs and to know what you are optimizing for, and to make sure you have something to run towards, not something to run away from. So far, it's been incredibly fun for me, and I will be sharing more of my learnings as I go. If you want to hear the rest of my journey and watch more videos about solo building, AI workflows, and the messy process of figuring things out, subscribe and I will see you next time.